Hello, good afternoon, everyone. The video that I have talked about previously, the video with the twist, is finally here. I'm so excited because I've been wanting to do this for quite some time now, and I'm even more excited about it because I get to do this with my niece Anna. I will be collaborating with her, and hopefully we'll be able to do more videos like this. But it is two things that I absolutely love, and that is the sudsy sponge squeezing and true crime. So today my niece will be reading our first case. We are keeping it local to our home state of Michigan. This is the case of the Michigan murders. Or also the case of John Norman Collins. He's also known as the co-ed killer, the Michigan murderer, the Ypsilanti killer, and the Ypsilanti ripper. Because this is true crime, I am going to give you a trigger warning right now. This case does involve rape and murder. So if that is something that you don't want to hear, or something that you're not into, you can shut the sound off and enjoy the visual, or you can just bypass the video altogether. I hope you guys do enjoy this, and I hope that we can do more cases in the future. But for our first case, this is the case of the Michigan murders.
The Michigan murders was a series of killings between the years 1967 and 1969 by an individual known as the Ypsilanti killer, or the co-ed killer, not Ed Kemper. The victims were between the ages of 13 years old and 21 years old. All of them had brown hair, and they were all beaten, raped, tortured, and murdered. So Mary Flazer was the first victim. She was 19 years old. She was an accounting major at EMU. She was found on August 7th, 1967, a month after being reported missing. Her body was badly decomposed and had to be identified by dental records. The pathologist that was examining her body was able to determine that she was stabbed at least 30 times. It was theorized that she had been raped, but because her body was so badly decomposed, they couldn't find conclusive evidence. Also, there were parts of her body that were cut off and were never found, unfortunately. And most of the victims were killed somewhere, and their body was put somewhere else to be found. So almost a year later, 20-year-old Joan Schell was found on July 5th, 1968. She had been raped and stabbed. Her throat was slashed, and her skirt was tied around her neck. That was a common trend for the killer, was to tie something around their neck. The people that found her were construction workers in Ann Arbor that stopped all work to find. They had smelt something really foul, so they stopped all production and went to look where the smell was coming from, and they found her, unfortunately. Her body, like the rest of them, was killed in one spot and then placed in another to be found. 2 months after Joan's murder, an eyewitness did come forward saying that she saw Joan with a man that they suspected to be John Norman Collins. He went to the police department to be questioned and gave an alibi of being at his mom's house at the time of the murder, and then his alibi was never looked into. So the next victim was 23-year-old Jane Mixer. She was a law student at U of M. She was found on March 20th at a cemetery a little boy and his mom found her. She was clothed. I know most of his victims were found nude, but she had clothes and a copy of Catch-22 by her side. The autopsy report showed that she was shot twice in the head by a .22 caliber pistol, as well as strangled by a nylon stocking. And they figured out that the nylon stocking was not her own. Hers were... She was not sexually assaulted, but knowing the killer, I don't think anything happened because she was on her period. She did have her tights pulled down to her thighs, but that revealed that she was on her period, so I don't think he did anything to her in that way. But like the rest, she was killed somewhere and then put somewhere else. So 5 days later, he decides to kill again. On March 25th, 1969, Marilyn Skelton, at 16 years old, was found behind a vacant house near Joan Shell was found. So she was beaten and tortured as well. That's as far as I'm going to go, though, because it's very brutal, and she was a child at the time. So it's, like I said, pretty bad, to the point where an investigator that was called to the scene said it was the worst injuries he's ever seen inflicted in his 30 years of police work. And it just gets worse. His next victim was Dawn Bassam. She was the youngest of all the victims at 13 years old. She was found by the side of the road. Her clothes, however, were found in a farmhouse, and it was later discovered the farmhouse was where she was murdered. On May 13th, the farmhouse was destroyed from arson, and they believed it was John Norman Collins that did it, as well as leaving 5 clips of lilacs in a row leading up to the driveway of the farmhouse. He was known to leave small fires, or to start small fires around his house when he was younger, so it's not surprising if he did do it. On June 9th, 1969, 21-year-old Alice Callum was found in a field partially nude close to an abandoned farmhouse. She had multiple slash and stab wounds. Some of the stab wounds were so deep that they pierced her heart. She was also found with a gunshot wound to the head, as well as a gunshot wound to her thumb. They think she put her hand up in self-defense to try to cover her face. And then her throat was cut down to her spine. Like, this man was brutal. And then the case that led to his arrest was 18-year-old EMU student Karen Beinman. She was found late July. She was face down in a wood gully. She was beaten and she had lacerations. Some were so severe that there had been sections of skin torn off. She also had skull and brain injuries from blunt force trauma. She was also forced to ingest chemicals, and those same chemicals were also put on her body, and they burned parts of her body. And then she also had a piece of cloth that was put down her throat to muffle her screams. But in that cloth, there were small hairs that were not hers, and the lab results came back to them being John Norman Collins. And they found blood stains in the basement where he killed her that were her blood type. So that's what led to his arrest, finally.
So that was the case of the Michigan murders, or John Norman Collins. He did receive a life sentence in prison and is still alive today. I know that was a doozy of a first case, but I hope you enjoyed our first video with a twist, and I'm excited to do more videos like this. We are open to requests for the Suds sponge squeezing and the true crime cases. Again, I hope you enjoyed our first case, and thank you for viewing and listening. Bye.